Councillors, this council meeting is being recorded in accordance with council's webcasting of council's meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you are in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded and also that you will abide by the council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager have the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches council's adopted code of meeting practice.
Thank you, General Manager. Could I have all those who are able to please stand for the prayer and acknowledgement of country? Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all people in the way of righteousness and peace, so that we may share with justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust and seek the common good. Amen.
Amen.
I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiadjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of the Aboriginal people in this land. Thank you. General Manager, is there any apologies?
Mr Mayor, could I just ask for apologies be recorded at this time for Councillor Jennings and Councillor Orban?
Move Councillor North and Councillor Rudge. Put the motion. Those all in favour? All right. Carried.
Can I just ask a question? If we're on the electronic, it's not an apology for Councillor Rudd, is it? Or was she seconding it? Seconding it. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, it's not a apology for anyone on the telecast, because the legislation has been passed to allow them to participate in this meeting as though they were physically present.
Okay. Declaration of interest, General Manager.
Mr Mayor, at this stage I have no declarations
I
of
have a
interest.
mover and a seconder. Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Put the motion. Those all in favour? All right, carried. Number 7, receive and deal with General Managers and Directors report.
Mr Mayor, could I get the
You missed
minutes?
the minutes.
The minutes from the last meeting?
Number 5.
Oh, they've missed them. Yeah, okay, just we need the minutes of the last meeting.
Well, the minutes of the last meeting. I have a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Item number 7, receive and deal with General Managers and Directors report. Item number 1, lighting of White Way lighting under awnings in the CBD. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christians, Councillor North. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favour? Carried.
Right.
Director of Culture and Community Services report. Item number 1, policies, Bathurst Museums. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge. Councillor Hanger. I put the motion. Those are all in favour? Against?
Right.
Carried. We'll start now with going to general business, and I'll start off with Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At this stage, I would really like to ask Council if they would just pay respect to Wendy McDougall. We're disappointed tonight that we are not able to wish her farewell because of circumstances. But as a former mayor, I would like to pay tribute to her 49 years of service. She has worked for numerous mayors and several general managers. She has given over and beyond what a staff member is normally would give. She has given so much charm and grace to her position in all the positions at council. She has contributed considerably to the Sister City relationship, to Australia Day, and to all the activities of council. So I would like council to acknowledge tonight the service of Wendy McDougall, who has now retired. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morse, and that is very nice because she has been a great worker, and as a lot of us councillors, a great employee for council.
She has. She's been a wonderful asset to council and to so many mayors.
Yeah, well done.
I would like to ask if it's possible to work out, with the help of the City Director of Corporate Services and Finance, if there's a way to assist the businesses that are being disadvantaged by the construction of the roundabout. I have discussed this with Mr. Jones, but I don't think there's an obvious way we can do that. I just would like to ask if it's possible to consider how we can make it easier for those businesses.
Well, I think we'll take that on board, Councillor Morse, and then you can talk to the General Manager on that one.
I will, thank you. The other thing is, it's with sadness that I announce that amongst all the other things that have been affected by the COVID-19, the Carillion has. You will be well aware that we have worked for many years in the community and within council groups and with the working party of the Carillion to bring the Carillion and the tower up to what it's supposed to have, and that is a clavier. Funds were raised by the community, grants were given by the state government and the federal government, and at the beginning of this year, well actually at the end of last year, the first final stage occurred when the practice clavier, which is an essential part of learning to play such an instrument, was delivered to Bathurst. The trust, which has been involved in the fundraising for the clavier for many years, gave that practice clavier to the conservatorium. The conservatorium is now in lockdown, and the 3 trainees which are being trained through donations from the anonymous donations from the Carillionist Society and Australia's great Carillion player, Lynn Fuller, who has been coming to Bathurst to give the lessons, that's no longer possible. The clavier is now locked up in the conservatorium and not available for practice, which means that if we want to launch the Carillion Tower, etc., at the end of this year, we don't have anybody in Bathurst to play it. So I'm just bringing it to council's attention that all the plans that we had for this year have been knocked sideways by COVID-19 for having Carillionists in Bathurst. We might try and do something different, but I'm not sure what will happen. But at the moment, it is unlikely that we will be able to access the practice clavier for 6 months. So that's a bit sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got a few items, but they shouldn't take too long. With this, obviously, traceability across the community is key to flattening the curve, as they say. But I'm interested to know how our council is actually dealing with this in terms of connection with the health sector. In particular, for example, do we know how many beds will be available in Bathurst for coronavirus cases, both in the public sector and across the private sector, given that there's been some kind of collaboration between the two? Is that an answer that we have at this point, or something?
I could put it across to the General Manager. We have spoken to the health departments the last 2 weeks, and we have another meeting in the morning with them on phone link, but Dave might be able to.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a number of beds at the moment, but certainly, as the Mayor said, as recently as today, and we have for the last 2 weeks been meeting in teleconference with the Minister and the Chief Health Officer, Dr. Chant. Tomorrow morning, we will be having a teleconference with the Western Area Health Service, and we should get some details on that with them tomorrow.
And just in follow-up to that, I'd also like to know not just the number of beds and where they'll be across public and private sector, but what are going to be the possible closures or suspension of services offered by the hospital in the process of making way for more beds. So I've heard some rumours, I don't know whether they're true or not, about certain things being closed in the hospital in order to make room for beds, that sort of thing. So I think our council should be fully aware of what those changes are.
And I'll get the General Manager to ask those questions tomorrow on your behalf.
Righto. And one more on the health front, but the general longer term problem that we have of that we don't feel like this health sector in Bathurst in terms of public health is being given enough attention. I came across a description of our health hospital system recently here in Bathurst, and the story was that Bathurst Hospital has gone from having 8 anaesthetists down to 2 in the last 12 months or so, maybe a little bit longer. First question is that true? And the other part of the story is that they haven't been replaced. And if not, why not? And is there any answer on that? Or?
Well, I think the General Manager could look for that question for you tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, and Councillor Orban might add his 2 bobs worth to that as well. But that's what I've been told, that there were 8 anaesthetists there and it's down to 2. Seems to me if you want to strangle a hospital, cutting out the anaesthetist is probably a pretty good way of doing it, because not a lot can happen of a serious nature without anaesthetics. So it's not a good look. And I guess I would just want to, given the coronavirus issue and the general, problem of our health sector that this council is well aware of, I would also think that now would be as good a time as any and restate my call for this council to set up the Bathurst Regional Council Health Committee, particularly for the next 6 months during this coronavirus thing. I mean, it just seems crazy not to have a direct, regular, formal, supported meeting forum in order to deal with health. But I'll leave that one there. In terms of health, the next item I'm interested in is, do we have an economic recovery strategy for when the wheels start moving again for this local economy from Bathurst Regional Council's perspective? Presumably we don't have one at this point in time, but are we working on one? And if not, I sincerely insist that we do, and that we have some kind of strategy in place before things start to change and improve.
I might get the General Manager just to answer that question for you, Councillor Jennings.
Mr Mayor, yes, there is a group of staff working on that matter. They will be putting together some thoughts over the next couple of weeks, and certainly we'll come back and talk to councillors. But there is a group particularly involved in the Economic Development Manager, the Tourism Office, the events team.
Thank you. Yep, that sounds good. I mean, we have to have things like shovel-ready projects as a start, but we've got a lot of public assets. We've got a lot of financial interaction with the business community as well. So there's options there, potentially along the lines of what Councillor Morse mentioned, but there may be better ways of doing it. Also, I just wanted to congratulate 2 local distillers in Bathurst, the Grange at O'Connell and also the one here at Gormans Hill. Both of them have responded instantly to the need for hand sanitizer, and what better product than to buy local on. And I'm also wondering whether or not Bathurst Council, I believe Bathurst Council is actually engaging in with the Grange distillery to purchase some sanitizer because it's in such short supply. But beyond that, for our own council needs, I'm just wondering whether or not there's an opportunity to have some kind of public dispensing of hand sanitizer, regardless of the source of where it comes from, or ensuring that there's plenty of it around in public spaces. So I've raised that internally with the staff already. And the last one, just could we get a very brief update on water security? The dam just doesn't seem to want to go over 30% at the moment. Doesn't matter how much rain we get. And the last few drops of rain we've had them all at Lagoon, and it looks like they've all gone into the catchment, which is only slightly south of us. But could we have an update on particularly the funding that's we're chasing from the state government?
We'll get the Director of Engineering to answer that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we have maintained our communication with the state government with regard to the execution of the projects that we are working on with regard to the Wimmerdale Dam pipeline augmentation and also the stormwater harvesting. The stormwater harvesting project, stage 1A, is very close to having that design work finalised, and we are working on with the contractor with regard to determining or forming a contract. We have not as yet been listed on the schedules for the critical or the Town Water Critical Needs Act. We are still working with the state government with regard to that listing. The appropriate environmental assessments and so forth to support that application have been forwarded to the state government, and we are chasing an answer on that often. We have also written a number of letters over the last week with regard to funding and also other parts of the work, including following up with the environmental flows out of Wimbendale and also Chifley Dam. So we're actively working on that hard, and we anticipate answers from the state government with regarding those matters as a matter of urgency.
Thank you very much for that answer. Very good, and fills in what I was wondering about. And just in closing, I would say it's verging on embarrassing. It's a total slap in the face that Bathurst is not on that critical needs list already. It's well and truly overdue, and it's simply just not good enough. And if we don't get rain over winter, we will run out at some point, and that's going to hurt.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Councillor Orban.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can I just say it's very disappointing Councillor Hanger's not wearing a suit. No. Can I just ask a question to Director of Community and Cultural about the operating conditions, new ones, of the library and the art gallery? I know there's been a lot of change and that sort of thing, but it'd be nice. How many people are online, Mr. Treasurer? He's not listening. How many online, bro? Yeah, 5. Well, you 5 people can hear. It's great.
Thank you for that. The library service is being staffed 5 days a week and is able to basically provide nearly all of the services apart from distributing a book. And we are contemplating how we might do that safely into the future. So the mobile library is servicing around 110 clients individually around the city. And we are ensuring those books are cleaned and prepared, and that's quite a service level. Old people's homes are still being visited. Villages where appropriate are still being visited, and the e-collection as well as streaming of children's stories at the same time as we were doing it normally during the week is receiving 100 or so or growing number of people who are viewing that. I posted a memo to councillors with the full range, and we will be continually to feed the stories of how we're adapting our service to the community during this COVID closure over the coming weeks through a range of media, including the TV, radio and print media.
Thanks for that. Excellent. Also, just in answer to Councillor Jennings' question on anaesthetist for the hospital, yes, it's dead right, 8 down to 2. And some of the surgeons are saying, this is the reason why 1 list in every 4 are being cancelled, is because there's no anaesthetics available. It's absolutely appalling. Absolutely appalling. I mean, I know we're going through this COVID-19 stuff at the moment, but we're waiting on the clinical services review to be brought out, which should be out, I think, in April. Would that be right, Mr. Director? Which will be, this is the reason it won't be brought out now for a long time. But yeah, look, things at the hospital are at an all-time low level, and that's a big reason why things are being cancelled, is obviously that one. There is other things I can go into, but I won't just now because I don't want to kick a horse while it's down. But watch this space. And I'd also just like to back up, and not having a crack at our Director of Engineering, but the matter of urgency was last November for this critical water list. I just cannot see for the life of me why Bathurst is not on this list yet, and I think we need to kick hard and kick more often. It's just not on. We should be on it. We've got to get those projects up and running. We know the consequences if we don't. So I think we really, really need to get behind our director and senior staff and just, start building. No other way out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A number of my water questions have already been answered from Councillor Jennings and Orban's questions. The only other question was in terms of the money coming from the state government for the water security plan and contracts. Understand we have $10 million guaranteed, or pretty close to, and we are after a total of something like 20 or 25 million for all these projects. Now the state government's shut down for 5 months, and state treasury, where does that leave us in a bid for the extra 10 to 15 million that that we thought we may have a chance of getting? Does this radically alter our access or our possibility of getting this funding, having state parliament shut down?
I'll get the General Manager to answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as recently as in the last week, I've had that discussion with people in the state government, expressing our concern if the state budget's delayed to September and the timeline of our projects would not allow for that. I'm assured that whilst the budget is listed for September, funding has been included in the forward discussion papers, and that the water security projects for around the state are likely, if they remain in that situation, will be addressed earlier rather than later. Certainly to assist us in our operations, we're talking about the funding mix that the first 10 million can go to, so that we can allocate to those stages that are already ready to progress. But at this stage, the feedback I'm still getting from the state government is very positive to an additional 10 million. We have asked for an additional 15 million. In terms of the projects themselves, as the Director of Engineering said, we are continuing to plough ahead with those and get all of the designs in place. At this stage, the first stage of the Wimmendale pipeline will be in place by May, and during May, and that will allow us to have access to 3 megalitres of water a day to add to our supply. Currently, my understanding is the town is using just under 10 meg a day. So we're talking, we're nearly going to be able to fit in a third of our supply through that. And that really reflects the work that the citizens and businesses of the city have been doing in regards to their water reductions. We certainly will help ourselves if the approval comes through for the variation in environmental flows. My understanding is we hopefully well up on consideration in that matter. We've forwarded all the paperwork. That will then give us some further protection. The pipeline, the stormwater pipeline then should pretty much be funded if the final approvals go. The REF has been completed, and a lot of that paperwork is off with the relevant government departments, and hopefully that'll be processed soon.
Thank you. And are you aware of, I've heard that there is some local media chat about the 15 million. Are you aware of any local media articles or talk about that, you know, public media about the 15 million?
No, I'm not aware of any media talk, and to be honest, if I'm going to be discussing the issue of the 15 million, it's better off coming from the people who know, which is the state government, and not necessarily the media.
The other thing was, there's been some discussion with Charles Sturt about a health precinct, extra health facilities, teaching facilities, possibly on the campus. And in the last few months, the pit complex has shown it's really good at being adaptable and reused. Firstly, with the drought, there was talk of relocating people from the west. Then the fires, there's talk of giving people temporary respite here in the pit complex. And possibly even with the coronavirus, we could see the pit complex used again. And I understand that some of our staff are working out of there as well. So it is a great asset, even though we can't race cars. It's incredibly important to have it. As we move forward with the health precinct idea, is there any scope to possibly increase the facility scale in that CSU region to include a larger hospital? And has that been discussed on any level? And possibly even another South Bathurst High School on the same site? I just wondering if there's been any discussion in that planning process.
Yes, Director.
Certainly, and I'll leave the director answer some of it, but if you're talking the heartland of the Mount Panorama motor racing pits complex, you would not be putting any permanent infrastructure in that regard to permanently run for medical, because of the need for the facility to be available for car races, and we've got 5 events during the year. And recently, the availability of the pits where we were looking at for the bushfire situation and also potentially for COVID-19 were always on the basis of short-term usage. So therefore, being that it would be intermittent and short-term, it would be unlikely that you would be looking at significant dollars having a worthwhile investment into that location. In terms of a hospital going on the CSU site, that's been a discussion that's gone on and off for at least the last decade, but I might pass that over to the director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, all of those possibilities have been canvassed with this latest precinct planning exercise. I should say, not so much the pit complex as a candidate for a facility. The consultant has undertaken the first phase of stakeholder engagement. So that includes Charles Sturt University, includes the private sector, includes most of the health providers in the region, as well as the ancillary health agencies. All of those suggestions are on the table, and it's the task of the consultant to sift through those to come up with a plan that's best for the future of Bathurst. We've had to, obviously, with the COVID shutdown, abandon our plans for a more public face-to-face consultation. So we'll just have to see how that part of the process unfolds. But the project remains live and still being worked on.
Just to correct the record, I wasn't suggesting we had a permanent facility in the pit complex, as the General Manager mentioned. I was referring to possibly the land, the old research station up behind the university for any future structures.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, just one or two things. The Business Chamber have been in touch and requested some sort of assistance during this health crisis. I'm just wondering if we've investigated any options in regards to helping them out.
Yes, I'll put that to the General Manager.
Mr. Mayor, the Mayor has spoken to Councillor Christian in the last week or whatever to ask that the staff start putting together some concepts and ideas of what might be assistance, but also to tie in with the, as was raised earlier by one of the councillors, what economic things could we put in place to help with the economy as it grows, hopefully from the recovery from COVID. But certainly we're looking at some possibilities, discussing them. We'll come back to the councillors, but there is nothing black and white at this stage. Most of our efforts have been concentrated on 2 areas, obviously the drought situation and then just getting the council in a position to be able to deal with the COVID-19 and maintain services.
Yeah, thank you for that. Hopefully the recovery period comes shortly, but this could be a drawn-out process. Just on my way here tonight, just a small one. The median strips on Lower Keppel Street are just a mess at the moment. Just wondering if we can get onto them. I actually saw them yesterday, the day before, and they're just completely overgrown. So if we get on that, that'd be great. And yes, in regards to the critical needs list, I just feel so frustrated for council staff. It seems like we're ticking all the boxes and we're being told, that we'll find out next Friday or we'll find out next week, and it's always
That's very disappointing.
Always a day away. And I'd ask the local media maybe to help us put a bit of pressure on, because it's completely unacceptable. This isn't something we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks. This has been talked about for a substantial amount of time, and it's just a slap in the face. It really is. And that'll do me.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor North.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of points. A gentleman who would be normally here, Mr. Tribin, had just put a request, I guess, that the events that we probably would have been funding, that Fire Winter Festival and things like that, that will probably be cancelled. What's going to happen with that funding? Is that funding going to be able to help basically keep our staff employed, given them other jobs to do, and he made the other jobs were the jobs like the toilet issues with BMEC, the footpath issues to the new Rail Museum and things like that. But I know Councillor Jennings spoke to him as well, and we said that one of us would raise the issue tonight. I'll forward the letter on to Mr. GM. Most of the water situation, the question and answers have come. Look, it is bitterly disappointing that, but I've just asked the director, and I think I know what the answer is going to be. Director of Engineering, the fine print of this document still hasn't been put in place, has it? Let alone us being on the list.
Through Mr. Mayor, no, it hasn't.
That in itself counts as a problem. We get a state government to put a policy in place and the fine print isn't there, so it's a bit hard to get gazetted on something that doesn't have any meat to the sandwich. Business support, yeah, we're all worried, and the lifeblood of any community is the small businesses. When you realise, I know our chamber represents, I think, about 200 businesses. I think the last count I heard, we had something like 3,900 businesses at least in this town, large and small. I know that our rates is something that is under the Act, and what are the things we have in place? Like every other day, our Prime Minister spoke about it's better to have the economy on idle rather than the economy shut down. Is there potential under the Act that we can put in place for those businesses, I guess, have shut down, that have hibernated themselves to lessen the impact, that the rates can be deferred? I know by the Act they must be paid, but do we have that movement within the Act to potentially defer rates and set up a new scheme for them to pay them off in the coming years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, really that fits into something this council already does, which is hardship provisions, and we do them on a case-by-case basis, so that if there was a business that considered it had legitimate hardship provisions, then it could come and speak to the council, and then the council may look at repayment schedules that would apply, and as to the appropriateness of interest charges on late payments, which may be varied.
Thank you. I think it was in the paper today, it was a picture of the mayor. I haven't had a chance to read the paper, but I'm sure I saw in the shorts about the skate park. So skate park and playgrounds and that being shut, where's the responsibility lie with the mums and dads and the kids there? Who enforces the fact that they are closed? I guess we can't fence them off if people turn up there and they're shut down. Is that a police matter or is that a council manager matter?
Well, I'll get the General Manager to speak, but I think it's a police matter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the policing of the COVID-19 requirements is a policing matter.
Yeah, because I was asked today that question, so they need to contact the police and say whatever the park is, and okay, thank you, I'll pass that on. Look, I guess, and all the councillors here would be the pressure that's been put on our staff, in the last 12 months from everything that's happening in our great nation. It's been tough, but we seem to be a pretty resilient council. We do a lot of hard work and we sometimes don't get the answer support we want, but our staff keep doing a good job. I see that the amount of good work that's been done in our libraries and art galleries and that to get the people involved. Is there a train of thought to the director in that area to potentially produce, or we may be doing, I've missed your email, maybe virtual tours of our museums with commentary behind it? Are we looking at doing something like that to maybe whet people's appetite moving forward?
I'll put you on to the director.
Sure, yes, we are. We've just relocated everybody and we've got the technology, as in the cameras, etc. We will be doing virtual tours as one example, but we're doing many other things as well. And tomorrow in the paper will be about SimCity. So the gallery has invented a gallery SimCity that you can sort of build and adapt, and that should be the papers and the media tomorrow. So that is just a couple of examples, but more will come. Yep.
Thank you. And I guess with the, it's really weird, so I look at the two councils, in their homes at the moment, and talking, I've spoken a number of times to our state member, and I guess the state parliament's shut down and they're working out of home. Where does our responsibility lie? A few people have asked me the question, and it's been playing through my mind. We are distanced ourselves. We're doing everything. I know at my work, I'm wearing gloves. I've been able to get some the hand sanitizer and all this sort of things. And everyone, 99% of people out there are doing the right thing. The state government have clearly, basically, I guess, shut the doors. Should we be going this way like we have our two councillors there? I'd like to see business as normal as much as we can to give the people the hope, and we need to keep doing business. But is there any directive on us, the fact that they've changed this, any directive that you think in the future that we'll have to do all this as sort of virtual video links moving forward?
There's every chance the state government may move down that path at this stage, as long as you comply with the requirements of the social distancing, and that's why we've got the place organised the way it is tonight. We can do that, but certainly some of the councillors, as time goes by, more of you may wish to operate from your home rather than coming here. But at this stage, the way we're operating is within the guidelines from the government.
Yeah, and you've got the opportunity tonight to see two councillors on the screen and see how it works. So we have the opportunity as all councillors to do that from home. Yes, Councillor Morse?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether I'm allowed to do this. You might tell me, but I would like to put a motion without notice. Am I allowed to do that?
No.
No?
No. Thank you. Not at this point.
Is there someone I can in this evening's activities?
Well, we'll wait till question time is finished.
No, there isn't anywhere where you can put a notice on that basis. But if there's something that you wish to discuss, if you let me know, and then I can issue something around to councillors, because it may not require a notice of motion. But I have to say, if it relates to COVID-19, the council's position is that we are adhering and applying to the government guidelines, and we will continue to operate under that regime.
It's probably more positive than that, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say, and I'll say it from my point of view, that I feel that council supports the action taken by the general managers to protect council staff and to provide essential services for the community. I think I'd like to say that we as councillors support what has been done. That's all.
No, thank you, Councillor Morse. Yes, Councillor Jennings.
Quick comment while you're talking about this, video conferencing. I can pretty safely say that using satellite internet only 10 kilometres out of town, that would not work. Okay. Guaranteed and successfully. It comes and goes. Yeah. It delays and buffers and all the rest of it. It's impossible to have a professional working conversation and meeting. So I think that probably needs to be. Yeah, well, I've had discussions with the General Manager himself, and I will be here on most times if we're able and we haven't caught COVID-19. So, you have the same opportunity to be in here with the General Manager and myself as what we're doing tonight. Councillor North, continue.
Yeah, no, that's, I guess, that created discussion. That's what I wanted, because I think it's good that we do this, because the issues like Councillor Jennings have said, that where you may live, it is a bad service, so it's very hard. So what's coming through tonight is really good. I know, again, I touched on the basis of the council, our council staff have done a tremendous job and should be thanked. I'm just going to keep raising this. I really like the idea that what Councillor Fry a couple of months ago did, and I said to the GM only again today, that as soon as we get the chance and you get some available staff, that we can work on a policy that it does work on other water infrastructure, environmental type projects, like Councillor Fry spoke about the gullies and that coming down the Rockley Road. I think it's got a lot of merit, and it's something that, speaking to Councillor Fry about, something done reasonably easily. But I think it's important that we do business as usual as much as we can, as much as we're in such unusual circumstances. And it's good to see that everything seems to be working all right. It doesn't look like the councillors can't hear us or see us. So well done to everyone. And yeah, let's keep plugging away. And Mr. Mayor, if you can keep us posted all the time what's going on, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I have tried to do that by emails or phone calls. So we'll continue to do that. Councillor Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everything that I've required has been handled by the directors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanger. Councillor Rudge.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, if you don't mind, I won't stand. I might be out of focus. I would like to, I guess, carry on from the point that Councillor North raised in regards to the playgrounds and outdoor gym areas. I've had some members of the community contact me over the last couple of days, stating their disappointment with some members of the public that are still utilising the outdoor gyms and the playgrounds that are obviously well used in the area, particularly out at Eglinton and in the Peace Park. I understand it's a policing matter. I did discuss this with the General Manager on Monday. I would, however, like to see Council do something in regards to this with putting signs up. I know the General Manager may say that the signs will be destroyed, but I think we need to get the message out there. People need to start protecting the Bathurst community and start doing the right thing. And we need to support the police in the role that they're trying to fulfil at the moment. They obviously can't be everywhere. It's a big job, and I'd just like to put that point forward to consideration. Thank you. I'd also like to raise the fact about the hospital. I've also had a lot of anonymous telephone calls in the last week. Some of those have been in relation to Panorama Clinic and the concerns of the Panorama Clinic. It's no secret that I was a guest now at Panorama Clinic some 4 years ago. That's out in the public domain. I guess some people are concerned about some changes with the Panorama Clinic in regards to the COVID-19 virus that we currently are suffering from. I have been in contact with the Minister of Mental Health, and her Chief of Staff, Daniel, has assured me that there'll be a media release in regards to any changes that may be occurring to put the community's mind at rest. So I feel quite confident, as you're having meetings with them tomorrow and discussions with various ministers. I'm sure the media releases will be out soon because people need to be reassured, because it is a difficult situation, and I think the more information we can get out there to the community, and the more information that we can get out there that the protections are in place within our community, would be the best thing at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Well, that comes to the end of our policy meeting. So the meeting is closed at 6:43. Thank you for the policy meeting. We'll now go to the ordinary meeting of council, and I'll ask the General Manager to read the recording of the meeting again, please.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to advise that the council meeting is being recorded in accordance with council's webcasting of council meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you're in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded, and also that you will abide by council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager have the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory, or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches council's adopted code of meeting practice.
Thank you, General Manager. Now we'll go to the prayer and acknowledgement of country, and could I have all those who are able, please stand for the prayer and the acknowledgement. Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all peoples in the way of righteousness and peace, so that we may share with justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust and seek the common good. Amen. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiadjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. A bit more, missed a bit. That's it. Any apologies there, gentlemen?
Mr Mayor, there are no apologies.
I have a mover and a second. Councillor North. Councillor Jennings. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Declaration of interest, General Manager. Do we have any?
Mr Mayor, there are no declarations of interest.
I have a mover and a second. Councillor Fry, Councillor North. I put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. Item number 5, receive and deal with General Managers and Directors' reports. Directors' report number 1, Renewable Energy Action Plan. I have a mover and a second. Councillor Fry, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the authors and the people who have worked on this. It's an excellent report. I just would like to ask the Director the arrangements for the public to view this plan now. Is it all online? Is it copies? No, can't be copies at the library. I just know how people are going to access the public exhibition, please.
I'll get the Director to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Certainly all of our online capability will be deployed and social media to promote where it can be seen online. You have raised the question of whether paper copies can be made available. That is a problem. This is not a statutory instrument, but I can let councillors know that the Department of Planning has issued orders that no longer require paper copies to be made available because of these very reasons. If a person needs a paper copy, and we'd like to test that first by talking to them, if they could contact my department, and if we accept the reasons for that, then we can make a paper copy made on request. I would prefer not to have paper copies available at the front counter for the obvious reasons. We want to minimise exposure to our customers as well as our staff.
And the reason I ask that, Mr Mayor, is because there are people in the community who are unable to get very good reception, as Councillor Jennings has pointed out, through the NBN. It's very flaky on the internet. It was terribly slow today, especially with the need now for school children to be homeschooled with the use of the internet. So if, I'll just repeat then, can I just say that if the public wants a copy of this report, they can ring council and they will be provided with one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Fry.
Again, as Councillor Moore says, I'd like to congratulate Council on doing the Renewable Energy Action Plan, which brings us another step forward towards sustainability, and it is a significant step in terms of coping with climate change, which is descending on us rapidly. I'd like to. I think that the document is a base document for discussion, and I'm hoping it will have a wider scope, and I'll actually have braver targets. And I mean, to have us 50% renewable by say 2025, I think that'll happen anyway. That'll happen just throughout the state. But I'd like to think that we can expand it to looking at having say 1 megawatt of power at our 2 critical infrastructure sites, the water plant and the wastewater plant. To put those two power stations behind the meter, I think it's quite economically feasible. The people say that we can't afford it, or we can't get the money, or it's too risky. I say that there's plenty of power companies out there who will fund it, they will pay for it, and they will just charge us our standard power rate for the next, whatever, 5 or 6 years or 7 years, depends if we get batteries or not. So I don't see it as a financial risk, putting 2 big power plants, PV arrays at our 2 critical infrastructure sites. And we can get no obligation quotes as well from people like Photon, and Photon, I'd like to say, are going really well. They've got infrastructure sites across the whole of Australia, really. They've just put 100 megawatts on the Aldi store here next door. Unfortunately, they've left the Brawongal site, and I really hope that's not because several councillors in this room voted to send them a letter that we weren't that keen on them, what they were doing out there. I'm hoping it's not that, and I'm hoping we can be seen as a progressive council in terms of renewable energy and not knocking back $100 million developments. So I think Photon made a decision to pull out of Brawongal and sell the access onto another company, which I don't know who they are, but I'm hoping we can re-engage with that company or those interests that have bought that site. And I think we can still move ahead and get a 100 megawatt power station for Bathurst. So hopefully we're over those few little speed humps and we'll be able to get something huge out of this. But in the meantime, we need this renewable energy action plan, and I'm hoping we can make it a little bit more broader in its scope, and we can get ourselves up and running with some of the more advanced councils like Byron Bay, who are getting quotes this month on a 5 megawatt power station. So they're moving ahead with that. And there's quite a number of other councils that are in that space as well. So yeah, a great start, and I'm hoping that there'll be a lot of community input into this plan when it's released.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor North.
Yeah, just in, I guess, a bit of relation to what Councillor Fry said, to clarify a few things. That I actually spoke to Photon, and it was a case of asking, instead of a high agricultural value land, to look at land that the same person owned that was much lower grade land, and actually spoke to them. It was a business decision, not a council decision. When it came down to it, they made a business decision. I personally spoke to them before and spoke to them afterwards, and when it comes down to any business has to make a decision if they want to do it, and the costing, we were told it tonight, to move it from that spot to that spot in I think it was a $30 million project, was $400,000 to $500,000. So when you're talking money that big, they made a decision. But I think there's no councillor here that doesn't want to see that sort of thing built. But this is a nation that's built off the back of a farmer, and good farming land has been lost in abundance over the last probably 20 or 30 years, and where councils can make decisions to protect land moving forward so it can continue to produce what we need, food, although the way the Australians are carrying on at the moment, hoarding everything and buying everything, seems very funny. But renewable energy, the worry I had, and it's good to hear that there's companies out there that will fund it, because I don't think moving forward this council, any councils here, their main plan would be putting money into securing a safe water supply. And like what I spoke earlier, Councillor Fry, about your ideas moving forward, we need to have water in this city. Councillor Jennings raised the issue that if we don't go on the list and they don't start giving us some money at the state government, we're going to have to find money, cut back projects, and unfortunately projects that, great ideas, but we're going to need the money for water. So it's good to hear if these companies have got money, they probably need to come and approach council. And I encourage you to ask them to do that.
Thank you, Councillor North. Any other councillors? Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Yeah.
Carried. Item number 6, resolve to go into confidential committee as a whole to deal with confidential report. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Christians. Are there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as whether to the matter should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee?
Have we done 6.21?
Sorry, Councillor Hanger, as there is no representation, I now put the motion to go into confidential committee. All those in favour? Carried.